Hey, what's up everybody? Ollie from flightcomp again, and I'm going to make another quick Prestige video. I'm assembling one for a customer. I have a tip panel here, and I'm going to go ahead and use the included servorahmen IDS system. So quickly, I'm just going to show how I'm going to install this, because I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to be using this stuff too, because it comes in the kit basically. So, real quick, the actual mount for the foam type IDS just slips, perfectly in the box already in the wing. And here is this hole here is the exit for the arm that goes through. So what I've done is I've just put this in here, found the middle of that hole for the arm, and drawn a line all the way out using the hinge as a reference to get a perpendicular line. So again, I've used a square on the hinge line like that, and just transferred that over to the top, and then we're going to basically cut a slot 11 millimeters wide into the face of the aileron. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here's the slot I cut out. I just used a sharp X-Acto knife to cut the face away, and then I'm using typical small like jeweler files, and I've just hogged out some of the row cell in there, and it's going to fit the control horn that goes inside. I've just put 2 pins in here just so it won't slip all the way in, and we're actually going to have to shim this horn a little bit when we glue it in. The next thing I'm going to do is cut a channel for the control rod to actually pass through. So I'll be coming in this way, and also from this side, again using small files. Alright, so I'm cutting the channel for the control arm, and again just using these round files, and I'm using the lines that I drew to help me go in straight. So I'm coming in from the back side here and exiting the slot in the tray, and also using that slot in the tray as a guide to help me kind of hog out the foam. Started with a round file, and now I'm going to move over to a square file. Okay, so I've finished the slot for the control arm, and I've also made some recesses on each side so that the control horn, when the aileron goes up, can recess or has a place to go, so you get enough up travel. So I made the slot, and then on each side of the slot I made a little recess for the little nubs on the horns. And now what I'm going to do is just epoxy the horn in, but we have to shim this up 1/2 millimeter from the face of the aileron, and I'm just going to use some scrap plastic for that. So I have a piece of 1/2 millimeter plastic here, and I just cut some bits off, 2 pieces, and taped them on either side of the slot for the control horn. You see them right there, there, and there. And now we can go ahead and epoxy the control horn in place. And I have just lightly installed 2 pins on each side that will sit against the plastic and keep this horn from slipping in too far. So we will mix up some epoxy and get this horn installed. Alright, I got epoxy in the slot I cut, and I've pushed the horn in, and those pins are against the plastic pieces. And I'm actually going to tape the aileron up like this, so it's the horn is butting up against this surface, and that'll just keep everything seated real nicely. and I'll just let the epoxy cure, and then we can move on to getting the arms installed and the servos in place. Alright guys, I have allowed the epoxy to cure on the control horns and the ailerons. So those are ready to go. And now we can get on to actually gluing or mounting all the stuff for the tray and the linkage and all that. Something interesting here, my customer is using the 6110 MKS servos. And obviously this is the tray for it. And I'm going to mount the servo with the output shaft on the first hole here, so closest to the hinge line, because the tray gives you the option of mounting the servo, you know, either way, here or here. But what I've found is that the arms that come with this kit are too short to work out in the tip panels here. So, I mean, even with the servo mounted closest to the hinge line or the output shaft, these arms are just too short. So I went over to the other kits that came with the model. These are for the X10 minis that are going to go on the flaps. And I used one of the arms from here, from the KST kit, and it's the 69 millimeter, or something close to 69, maybe 70. From hole to hole, it measures about 69 millimeters, and that's going to work out perfectly here. I've already done up one panel, as you can see, and that's how it came out. And it worked out really good. We have the output shaft sticking up basically perpendicular to the servo, or the servo arm, and the control surface is fairly neutral, so that worked out really well. So the thing I'm confused about is if you were building, let's say you got this plane with 4 of these kits and you were going to use these servos in the ailerons and flaps. Let's say you got a light model. I don't know that you would be able to get your ailerons hooked up. And I haven't done the flaps yet, but you might even run into trouble with the flaps too. So yeah, I really don't know what's going on there. I don't know how you'd get these short arms to work. Let me just pull them out of the bag and show you. So that's the longest arm there, and if we kind of line it up where it might go, maybe something like this, we can see we're still well short of the spot where we need to be. So that's interesting. Maybe if you guys have problems with this or solutions, you can let me know in the comments. But anyway, we're going to be able to make this work because we have the KST kits too, and we can use the arms from the KST kits. So I have sanded this bay on the bottom and on the sides, and I've also sanded the tray, the bottom anyway. I'm going to scuff up the sides a little bit too, and I've rounded off the bottom edges. You see that right there? How I've kind of put a radius in them. Because, you know, this molding isn't perfect in these corners, and you can get little imperfections. And basically, when you slide this in, it won't sit down all the way. So if you round off these corners, it'll allow it to just, you know, basically sit flush. And then I'm going to have to cut a hole here for the servo wires, or the wire, to pass through. Because the way the Prestige works is we're going to have an exit for the servo wire pretty close to the spar here, the joiner. That's another reason why you want the output shaft to be closer to the hinge, because it allows a straight shot from where the wire exits the servo to come straight out. If you had the servo flipped around the other way, you'd have to route the wire down, then across, and then back, which is not a big deal. But okay, let me cut the hole out for the wire here, and I'll scuff this up a little more, and then we can go on with the next step. All right, next step is to glue the box into the recess here. And I'm going to use 15-minute epoxy because since this is boxed in completely, we don't really need a super slow cure epoxy because this isn't going to warp as the epoxy dries because it's so strong. And I've just put a few little drops on the edges. As you can see there, you don't need too much. You don't need to lather it all in on the bottom. Basically what will happen is as you push this tray down, the epoxy will kind of ooze out onto the bottom anyway, and you'll have a pretty tidy setup. And I've already put the bearing in here, as you can see there, and I've cut this big hole out on the end for the wire to come out, for the servo wire. It has some holes cut out already, but they're not really in the right place, so just cut your own there on that end. And we can just install this guy and push it into place, and maybe use a few bits of tape or whatever to hold it as it cures, and that's basically it. And you can already see some of the epoxy oozing out. We really didn't use that much, and we got a good bond going. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to slide the arm in and attach it to the control horn. Alright, I put the horn in here for the servo, into the bearing, the smallest horn, and then I used a Q-tip here and just cleaned up some of the epoxy that was oozing out so that we didn't have a fillet, so the servo could fit in there real nicely. Alright, here are the little pins you need, and I've already ran a pin through here, the control horn and the arm, and I just want to tell you guys to be really careful when you're doing this. You're going to be using like hemostats or little needle nose pliers, and it's really easy to slip and gouge your wing, scratch your wing, dent your wing. Just be really, really careful and mindful when you try to put these pins in. Don't put a lot of pressure on them. Use small movements. Because, yeah, it would be super easy to slip and make a big boo-boo on your brand new airplane. So it's coming out here. I need to align that control horn with the arm and then run a pin in there as well. Alright, I've pushed the pin through this control arm here, the control horn, and be really careful. You're going to have some sticking out on this side. Don't push it all the way through. Basically, once it goes in and you feel like it's in, leave it alone. It's going to be flush kind of with this end here. So the pin will be flush with this side. If you put it will go further if you push it more, but then you're going to get into this side of the tray and it's going to jam in there and bind everything up. So again, leave a little bit of that pin sticking out so it's flush with this side of the control horn. And now we can go ahead and bolt the servo in. Everything is hooked up, the servo's in place, and I have my servo tester here, and I'll just show you that we get plenty of travel. Unfortunately, we're using probably, I would say, 50% or less of the available travel in the servo to move the surface to full deflections. So as I had mentioned in my previous Prestige build videos, you will lose some resolution and power or torque using this IDS setup, but nevertheless it's still a good option for some people. And like I said, generally these kits are supplied with the model depending on the servos that you choose. The next thing we got to do is cut a channel here for the wire to exit here. Then we can run the wire through and we can put the servo cover on. But I think I'll save that for when I do the flap install, the flap servos using the servorahmen IDS, because we are going to need to align the hole here with the hole in the center panel. So I'll just wrap this one up here. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one.